Hi everyone, welcome to Chiron, the Wounded Healer. This is my first astrology video, and I'm so excited to be doing these now in addition to tarot as well, okay? In learning about astrology, I have my notes here just so you guys know when I'm like looking down. I'm reading because there's so much that I want to touch on and so much I want to talk about, and I just wanted to make sure I'm not leaving things out, okay? But I wanted to preface this by saying, you know, this is my learning process, all right? And in learning about astrology, I think it's everyone's first duty, or to learn about themselves and to study their own chart and their own placements and the aspects and the relationships between the planets, okay? Because it gives someone an intrinsic understanding of what things mean and how they are applied in real life. And an understanding of myself is thereby an understanding of you, okay? It kind of goes hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other, you know? These videos, I will be discussing my own chart and my own life a lot. And I think it's important for me to be very raw and to be very vulnerable as well, because it's like without that rawness and that real aspect, I think it's too fluffy. You know, I'm online and I'm reading about this placement means this, and this is how this can be applied. But that's great, and it does help with guidance, but it takes the real life out of it, I think. So I will be talking a lot about myself, but it is to, you know, it's my own path of self-discovery that I'm hoping will encourage you to truly understand yourself and really where you are coming from as well. So I really wanted to make a point to say this because I think it's important. I really hope that we will all hold ourselves accountable and responsible for understanding ourselves, you know, our own sense of truth, our own sense of morality, of goodness, and to recognize what makes us strong and to recognize what makes us weak as human beings, all in this collective experience. You know, to not work against ourselves, but to work alongside our natural abilities. You know, to undergo this study of ourselves and to not take the word of any other astrologer or any other tarot card reader, you know. It's good for a starting point. It's good for understanding the logic and the objective aspects, but you need to fill in the gaps and to make those connections within yourself. And that's kind of where I'm coming from and why I'm going to be doing these videos, and also why I'm going to be talking about myself a lot, all right? Because I'm interested in learning to use astrology not for the predictive aspects, all right? Not when will I get married, when will this happen, you know, pay attention to this because this could be a potential health problematic year. And I'm not saying that stuff's bad. It's not bad, it's good to be able to understand and to preempt everything, but I am more interested in its ability to identify the path and the journey of our soul in this particular incarnation, okay? And how to make the best of the challenges that are meant for us. Again, I'm gonna repeat myself. How to accept and act upon our responsibility to fulfill and attain our best possible life, and to reach the highest degrees of spirituality that we possibly can to help bring us back home. Okay? And I know I'm like half reading, half talking to you guys, but there's so much passion behind that, and I hope that you can pick up on it. I'm kind of a dry personality and kind of quiet and all of that. Like I don't have a strong Mars placement at all, so I don't come off strong. I don't come off with emphasis a lot of times. So I'm kind of like needing to say there's passion behind that. There's a true sense of what I desire in my life. And I think that a lot of us are going through that. That's not like just me. It's not I'm just this lost soul and I need help. It's problematic. It's like an epidemic problem that all of us are very lost and very confused and don't have a sense of true purpose. Now, I'm not saying that's everybody. I am absolutely not saying it's everybody, because I think some people do. And those people are our warriors, they are our champions, and we should look to them as, you know, for inspiration, okay? Now, I felt inspired to start with Chiron. I could have talked about the sun, which is the big, most important one, right? I could have talked about the moon or the ascendant or all of these things, but Chiron was coming up a lot in my, especially my Capricorn and my Aries readings for July. And if you don't have a relationship to anyone with those signs, you probably didn't watch those videos. So I'm going to share that story again. All right. And I'm going to do it better than I did in those two videos, because I was doing it spontaneously and just kind of off the cuff. So let's talk about Chiron. Okay. It's considered to be, so what is it? First of all, it's symbolized in your chart as like there's a circle and it's like a line. I should have put a, I'll actually, when I'm making this video, I'll cut it and I'll make the graphic. So there's the circle at the bottom and there's the kind of like a K, right? The spelling of Chiron. It looks like a key. And that's essentially what it is. A key for healing. Okay. Guys, I had to cut this really quick because I left this part out of the video. I didn't realize I didn't talk about it. I want you to realize, or I want you to know what Chiron is. And I went straight into the symbolism with the key, but Chiron is a minor planet. All right. It's not like an asteroid. It's kind of like a Habsy, you know. It's located between Saturn and Uranus, and it sort of acts as that intermediary between the crystallized rigidity of Saturn and that random rebellious nature of Uranus. And so it's kind of that balance. Now, in my opinion, it would make sense if Chiron were the ruling planet of Libra, as opposed to Venus ruling Libra, because Libra is that balance. It is the scale, you know, and it is the scale of balance between ourselves and the world around us. But, you know, Chiron is, because it's a minor planet, and it kind of has a lack of probable permanence because of its size and its state. A lot of times, I was reading on one of the planet sites, Wikipedia or something, it talks about a tendency for these types of masses to disappear or to leave in, you know, after several millions of years. They tend to kind of lose their orbit and kind of disappear. So I wanted to interject that just so you guys understand what it is and where it's located in the solar system. It's the divide between kind of like the inner planets and the outer planets. So not only is it balancing between Uranus and Saturn, but also the inner planets that have a lot of strength and weight in our personality, but also the outer planets in terms of those are called the generational planets, the planets that move so slowly through the chart that they affect generations. Okay, because Mercury moves very quickly and all of this, but these are the slower, more larger scale planets there. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. Chiron was the centaur son of Kronos, who is Saturn, and a beautiful nymph whose name I'm probably going to totally butcher, but Philyra. Okay, Kronos was a cruel god. Like we all hear about Saturn, we know it's a tough god, right? He fell madly in love with Philyra, and she was trying to escape his advances. So she converted or turned herself into a mare, trying to escape, trying to blend. Well, being a Titan god, Cronus turned himself into a stallion and had his way with her. Left and never returned. He raped her, essentially. Okay, essentially that's what it was. After doing so, he left. He never came back, but yet Chiron was born. Upon seeing her newborn child, the Lyra was so disgusted and so appalled, half man, half stallion, that she abandoned the child, right? Later on, Chiron was adopted by the sun god Apollo, and Apollo took him in, nurtured him into being the best healer and the best mentor in all the land. He was the mentor to the sons of kings and the mighty Greek gods. Okay, he is the epitome. I should have pulled this of the hermit. Now I know that the hermit is associated with the sign of Virgo, and the more and more I think about it, I'm like, why on earth is the hermit the sign or the Virgo? It doesn't make any sense to me, and I'll get back to this in a minute. But essentially, he was the old wise man on the mountain. Okay, with many healing abilities. Now, one day there's discrepancies in history as to why this skirmish happened. Some have to do, it talks about wine with Hercules being at Chiron's house for dinner. They open this bottle of wine and the smell. I don't know. It doesn't really matter why, but essentially there was a skirmish between the other centaurs and Hercules. Now Hercules had these arrows that were poisoned or dipped in the blood of Hydra. They were poisonous. And when they struck their victims, they left wounds that were doomed to never heal. In this battle, Chiron got in the middle and was struck by one of these arrows. Chiron was immortal. So upon being hit in the thigh, he was doomed to a life of pain, an eternal life of pain, an eternity of pain. Okay. Now, separate story. Prometheus, a Titan god, was being punished by Zeus for stealing fire from Olympus and giving it to the mortals. Zeus had punished Prometheus by tying him to a rock and sending his eagle every night to eat his liver. And every night that liver would regenerate, thereby dooming Prometheus to a life of pain and suffering as well. The only way that Zeus would let Prometheus go was if someone took his place. And Hercules, feeling so terrible for inflicting such pain on his healer and mentor, that he worked out a deal with Zeus and said, Chiron will take the place of Prometheus. And so Prometheus was set free, and Chiron, sacrificed his immortality and eventually died. Zeus, sympathizing with the story and feeling touched by what happened and what he had done, cast Chiron into the sky. We now know as the constellation Centaurus, Sagittarius. Forever being immortalized, the one thing that he gave up so that he could find peace, but being immortalized in a different form. Okay, it's a really sad and really tough story, but it is a beautiful story. And it's important to know the story, because if you don't know it, you're just like, oh, Chiron, it's kind of a crappy placement. But no, it actually is the key, the source of your true inner power. It's a very important planet that I don't think a lot of people really talk about, unless you're learning about astrology and you're working with an astrologer. But we focus so much on the sun, the moon, and the ascendant, but there are that's how all the planets are, right? They all have this big nature to them, and it makes up such a huge part of who we are and how we live our life. So now I'm going to get to the part where I talk about myself. All right, I encourage you to look at your own chart while we're kind of talking about this, and to Google these things. Just Google it, and it will. There's tons of information out there about all of this. And if you don't know your chart, you don't know, go to astro.com or just Google like free astrology natal calculator, and there's tons of these generators out there. If you don't know your time of birth, okay, you can still run a report based on like the sunrise or the sun, or like the midday, if you type in noon or something, and it can at least give you an idea of which sign those planets are in, but you may have a little bit of difficulty with the houses specifically. And I do encourage you to go to your place, city, county of birth, or you know, wherever in the world you're from, to know this information, your time of birth, because it does make a difference. And what was I gonna say? There are some astrologers out there, I'm sorry, I don't know which ones I would refer if I knew them, but they can backwards engineer based on certain events in your life, and they can backwards engineer to help you determine your time of birth, all right? So if that's something you need or something you're interested in, just Google that, and I'm sure you'll find someone quality out there. There's a lot of people that study astrology, so it should be good, okay? Hey guys, okay, so I had to cut the camera because a couple reasons. One, actually I didn't cut the camera. I like took a break and left and went and did errands and stuff. Because I had to really think about this. And this is my Chiron coming out full force, okay? I'm gonna just talk about my placement of Chiron in Gemini. So some basic outlined traits, okay? Like a couple little bullets. One, fear of expression due to lack of feeling heard in childhood. Let me move my computer here. Which constantly having to relive those moments when my dad was like, shh, just shh. Like when he had that stern face. Maybe your guys' dads did that too, like that stern face when you knew it was time to just stop talking. I remember that so clearly. And it's kind of like that thing that comes back when I'm doing my thing and I'm being all, you know, myself, and then I say something that's going to be a little bit awkward or a little bit inappropriate. And like if, let's say I was a Sagittarius and like not a Virgo or something, and I could just say whatever I wanted, like no stress, or like a Gemini that's just like blah, lets it go out. But no, there's so much like outside looking in when I do anything or try to express myself that I kind of have just stopped expressing myself, really, a lot of times. There's not a lot of confidence in my own opinions and my own interpretation of information, okay? In childhood, made to feel like my ideas were not high quality. From parents, I don't really like specifically remember anything school related or anything like that, but specifically parents. So in adulthood, displays of over precision before expression leads to non-expression in spontaneous situations. And it's true. A lot of times I will just not speak. I will just not communicate. And there will be times when I'm thinking a certain thing, or even like, excuse me, if I know something, like I know that someone is wrong, or I know that that's incorrect, or it needs to be addressed, I won't. And up until this point in my life, when I'm having this kind of like spiritual crisis, if you will, I don't know if I would call it that, but you know what I mean. Up until this point in my life, I've kind of just been like, that's who I am. And like not letting my free will like really kick in and say, well, no, you don't have to be that way, you know? And I think we all have those moments in life where we're like tired of the norm, we're tired of the way that we've done things. And that's kind of where I'm at and what is spawning all of this. These videos aren't meant to be like my personal therapy sessions, but I'm applying my own experience and my own real life into the placement so that you can hopefully understand a little bit how you would piece the pieces of the puzzle together. So not only do I have Gemini, my Chiron in Gemini, but my Chiron is in the 9th house. So my chart is a little bit flipped, okay? Like Libra ascendant, because Libra is actually the ruler of the 7th house, which is opposite Aries, which is ruler of the 1st house. So Libra ascendant, it's like the chart is just flipped. So Gemini, who's the ruler of the 3rd house, is now ruler of the 9th, which is its opposite. So it's just like going across. So there's a link there with the polarities and the natural house placements, which I thought was interesting. It's something I didn't ever really think about, but I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing. So having Chiron in the 9th house, there's this constant search for higher meaning. And it explains my desire. If you watched my Bali video, it explains my desire to find out why. And it's sort of the reason why I'm embarking upon the study of evolutionary astrology as opposed to just like the predictive aspects, okay? Evolutionary astrology is the journey of the soul and addressing those desires. And like I said in the beginning of the video, what we need to do to really return back home to source, to God, and to understand true fulfillment at its fullest form. So that's my drive. And it's funny now that I'm looking at this and I'm really thinking about my whole life is now under a microscope. It's now being, I'm discovering things. And my whole life, I've never cared about really having a career. Like there was a time when I worked really, really hard when I ran my business and I had a relationship, but I moved in with my boyfriend and I had like all the things that you were supposed to have, and it was such a mess and didn't provide any happiness whatsoever that I kind of like went into I wouldn't call it a depression, but it was definitely a spiritual crisis for sure. And I think I'm finally like coming out of it by realizing what that was and realizing what happened. That was around my Saturn return, which is totally normal for anyone who's been through a Saturn return. Like you're like, oh yeah, I gotcha. I know what you mean. And I do have some placements and aspects with Pluto going on in my chart right now. And as I'm looking at my transit on my progressed charts, I'm like, oh, this makes all perfect sense. Like I'm supposed to be doing this and it's part of my journey and all of this. But I think that my sharing of my experience, my expressing, my communicating of my self-discovery experience is what I'm meant to do. It's what I'm meant to accomplish, to achieve a sense of fulfillment. And there's things going on with Pluto, right? And other planets as well that are kind of adding to this. And I know this video is just about Chiron, but Chiron was the one planet when I was looking at my own chart that really stood out to me because of my inability or my lack of desire to talk. Is that a weird thing? And I will tell you that when I publish my, even still to this day, when I'm publishing my YouTube videos, I have such a high level of anxiety when those get pushed out to the internet, because that is like my whole soul being just like out for the internet, up for criticism, up for what, and some people have no problem with that. Like, okay, yeah, tell me you hate me, I don't care. That's not my personality. I do take negative criticism harshly, and I sort of deflect the positive, but it's all part of this like this process that I'm going through, and I'm trying to be Virgo. I'm trying to be analytical about it and not like take it personally, but you know, that's something that is part of my makeup and my programming that needs to be readdressed, and that's a difficult process. I don't remember if I talked about this already. The thing about Chiron, okay, is it's that part of your life that always seems to have an edge. It's that part of your life that always is very sharp and it strikes a nerve And like when someone brings it up, or when you see someone that has that trait where you are not, you do not possess confidence, that you may feel envious or jealous, or you may be very drawn to those people, you know, as sort of a compensation mechanism for their talents to compensate your weaknesses. Or you may be, you know, even inspired to tear them down if you have kind of some negative stuff going on, right? To pull them down and to deprive them of their talents simply because you do not possess those. So I will tell you, like, full disclosure, it made perfect sense when I was researching this, my relationship to the sign of Gemini, because it comes out in really intense feelings of inadequacy when I'm talking to a Gemini. And it's even like when I'm watching other tarot readers, like the Quietest Revolution, Amber Khan, I hope she doesn't mind that I'm talking about her. Like, she's amazing and so smart and so well articulated. And there's another one that's also a Gemini, Eliza Jane, and so like I can see their wheels just like tick, 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 tick. And that is not something that I have. Like, I have to, I mean, even with this little video where I'm talking about this, I'm even editing and filtering and having so much fear with how it's going to be received. And I really considered, because I made one video and I did like a first take, and it was like 40 minutes long, and I just like went and talked and talked. But there were things in there that I just kind of like things that I didn't put in there, or things that I wanted to say that I didn't, or that I was like, oh, I don't really need to. And the editing was just, I was like, well, I'll just re-record it, because I wanted to focus not so much on something that, it doesn't matter. It's just, I was just changing my direction a little bit. Now, okay, I'm gonna be talking about some aspects. Actually, before I do that, just to kind of put it into someone else's shoes, right? Let's talk about another Chiron placement, because not everyone's gonna have it in Gemini in the 9th house, right? Someone may have it in Cancer in the 2nd, or Sagittarius in the 6th, you know, so it's all gonna really depend on you. I wanted to bring up this example, and it's the example of someone that may have a Chiron in a house or a sign like Capricorn, or in like the 10th house, the 2nd house, or even like the 11th house in the realm of friends, clubs, memberships, you know, community involvement, that whole type of thing, in the form of money, because it's an example that we can all understand. It's like all on the movies and everything. So someone that would have a difficult placement like this would try to overcompensate by working really, really, really hard and like making millions of dollars, and still constantly trying to fill in that sense of satisfaction from that. So while they had the ability to make the money, it was still like something that was sore, like it's a sore topic. Like they're so afraid of poverty or so afraid of scarcity that they like totally go overboard. Not saying that millionaires are bad, but that they, you know, it's a compensation mechanism, and their strength is kind of their weakness at the same time. Or on the other side, they could go so far against the value of possessions and go full-blown minimalistic and have nothing and denounce material wealth of all kinds. Either way of the spectrum, it all comes back to that center Chiron. And when you think of it, Chiron sacrificed his power, right? The one thing that he had, but his power was holding him back. His power was in effect his weakness. And the way out is to not try so hard. Like that's your freedom, that's your key. To not try so hard, you know? And to allow things to just unfold organically, to recognize your envy of other people or jealousy or your desire to take something from them or to tear them down or just the like sense of inadequacy. And recognize that within yourself that, you know, because Chiron ended up being immortalized anyway. Without him trying, without him fighting for his life, he was still rewarded in the end in a way that was so much more powerful, because now the whole world could see. The whole world could see him and appreciate him and remember him. And now he had a place in the heavens. Another example that I wanted to share was, I watched this video of this woman. It was something random in passing on Facebook. I could never tell you what it was. But it was a woman. I don't even know if she was famous or not. I didn't recognize her, but it was a woman who was talking about how poor she was. And she had such a constant, like always thinking about, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And she said, you know what? I have so little, but I feel like I need to give. So she emailed everyone she knew and said, I'm going to have a free dinner for anyone that needs a meal this whatever Friday night. So she goes with her food stamps and goes to the market and buys like she said the dollar store. She buys the cheapest food that she can, as much of it as she can. And she creates this meal, and she has so much anxiety that no one's going to show up. But slowly through the night, people started showing up. And I think now she's like a famous chef, or she owns like a famous like charity or something. I don't even remember the end of the video, because I was like, oh, in such tears, because it was so perfect and synchronistic with this. I should have saved it. It was like so perfect in line with this, was someone that had nothing, that dove into that pain and found something to give out of that. And it was her release. You know, so for me, like, I'm not the biggest tarot card reader on here. I don't have that big of an audience. I have amazing people that are like, make it totally worth it. But it's not my goal to be anything other than what I am, and to be able to have confidence in saying what I'm saying, and just my confidence in just wanting to share, you know. And I'm hoping that it will be okay, and that it will be fine. I'm sure it will. And I'm hoping that people can get value out of it, you know. So that's kind of my pain point, is being so worried about my speaking and my able to communicate and to convey ideas. So now let's change gears for just a minute and talk about the aspects. Aspects are the more important part. It's in relation to other planets. So I'm going to be talking about things that might seem a little bit out of place. But like, for example, my first one, I have Chiron in a week trine to Jupiter, and my Jupiter is in Aquarius in my 5th house. So there's like that connection to both houses now, and it's kind of being pulled both ways. So both Chiron and Jupiter have spiritual aspects to them, and Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, which is the ruler of the 9th house. Jupiter is optimistic, while Chiron, you know, leans into the pain and suffering to find light. I'm always able to rise above like distressing circumstances, you know, and to maintain like faith and the ultimate victory of the soul, you know. I'm Virgo, all right, and I do have I had an astrologer do some analysis, and she was very on point. She was like, you have a very serious face, you have, you know, Saturn here, and this, I don't even remember what the particular relationships was, but she's like, you have a very serious disposition. You're very detached. You have a very, like a bitchy resting face. I was like, yeah, I really do. I really do. It's like one of those people that, it's like those stupid videos on Comedy Central, those skits where they're like, what's wrong? Nothing. And then they look like they're so angry about something, but it's just their face, right? That's how I am. And so a lot of people don't see me as someone that's optimistic. I'm Virgo. I can be a little bit realistic at times, which kind of pisses people off, but it is what it is. But I do still maintain that, like, it's all for the greater good. Let's focus on the big picture, and let's not worry so much about the seriousness of the moment, because that seriousness of the moment will soon pass. Like, this moment isn't going to be this moment forever. We are moving quickly into the next one, you know, and I do kind of operate my life that way. Now I'm gonna get really real. All right, now this is not my therapy session, like I said, but I think it's important to expose my wounds, I don't know, as an example. I don't know. I don't know why I'm feeling compelled to do this. And I'm really opening myself up, and there's a lot of vulnerability, but it is what it is. And this is just me being authentic to who I am. And I'm hoping that it will inspire you to be the same. One thing that really got to me when I was researching this was this: wounded spirituality, alignment with a religious influence in early years to which I never developed a bond. My mother raised myself and my siblings Mormon, and maybe people don't really care about that, or maybe people don't even know what that is, but there is a lot of stigma there, so be nice. And it was interesting because my father was Catholic, and he's extremely left-brained, intellectual, like not religious at all. So it was mostly my mother that was influencing this. And while I have nothing against it at all, like I do think there are beautiful aspects to any and all religions, and the values and the morals I think are on point. I have more of a problem with the rituals and some of the stories and some. I'm not going to get all conspiracy theory, but there are things that I never connected with. Let's just say that, okay? There are things that I never connected with, things that I never understood, things that didn't make sense, that didn't add up. There was a lot of like hemming and hawing and a lot of information that didn't match. And I never felt what they told me I was supposed to feel. You know, like when you're praying and you're supposed to feel this connection. Like I'm reading tarot, and I have more of a connection with my cards than I do with like the Bible and scripture, okay? And yeah, it was interesting to read about that, and to look back to my early teen years, because I left, you know, in my late teens. I kind of left and really never went back. But in my early teens, when you're still under the influence of your parents, you just do what they say. And I remember always thinking and never asking. Again, that expression, never feeling like I could express myself, or I could ever talk, or I could ever ask questions. Like, who was I going to ask questions to? All my friends were Mormon. You don't ask them. Their parents were like devout LDS members. You know, you don't talk about that stuff, and you don't question it. And I think a lot of people who have religious influence have felt the same. And hopefully during their adult years, if they decided to stay in that religious, you know, organization, that they are totally on board, and that they really believe, and that they did question, and that they came to a position of truth on their own about whether or not that religion was for them. But I have kind of a wound from some of that. Now, the next aspect that I have is Venus in quintile with Chiron, okay? Venus, we all know, is kind of about relationships, the ruler of Libra and of Taurus, okay? Love. You know, when you're doing love compatibility, you like to look at your Venus sign. I have Venus in Leo in my 11th house, which is a difficult enough as it is, Venus in Leo. You should Google that. You should Google all the Venus signs and what they mean. But issues with relationships, and issues truly caring for another soul. And I'll tell you, This is a part of my life. So I'm going to actually just keep reading this. I struggle with detachment due to mistrust of the genuineness of others, even though I crave the emotional closeness that comes with a relationship. It also gives me the desire to help people, but I may be unable to help them to the fullest of my potential because I still have stuff to deal with, because it's associated with the wounded healing sign. I have the ability to heal, but a very, it's like Chiron, unable to heal himself kind of thing, okay? So tarot has really hit this one home, and I feel like this one has been addressed, and this one has been revised, and I feel like I'm not as strongly under this influence anymore, because tarot gives me connections with people that I never thought I would have. And there's a closeness and there is a trust that people give me. And even if they lie to me, I can often call them out in the reading. So there are no barriers. There are no boundaries there. And I feel empathy when I'm reading for people, and I feel it in like tingles in my heart, in my chest area, and even in my back, like if someone is stressed and anxious and I'm like, oh, I can feel that tension, and I feel more connected with people than I ever have. Now the next one is similar but different, okay? But I think the Venus quintile with Chiron is well, it's always a process, that true sense of empathy. I think a lot of times empathy can be hard because it's like, oh, well, it's not my life. It's not my life, it's their life, and so there is just that, and I'm doing it online, and I'm doing it like, via video and YouTube, so I'm not sitting in the room with you. So there is that disconnection anyway, and it's not a hurdle, but there is a barrier there. Let's talk about the moon in conjunct Chiron. Moon in conjunct Chiron. This one is a big one. And again, I'm getting really personal here, guys. I know you're not my therapist. You don't need to psychoanalyze me, all right? You don't need to do that. Believe me, I'm doing enough of that myself. It's just, well, I've already said it. So difficulties relating to the feminine, especially feminine authority figures. The mother, okay? I would say I have more mommy issues than I have daddy issues. I have both, but my mother was in my life, and she and I moved to Las Vegas after my parents' divorce at the age of 14. She moved me down to Vegas, left my siblings up in Utah, and she was very focused on, in her mind, was survival. Even though my father is like a stand-up guy, always paid the child support and the alimony payments, like never missed a payment. Every single day it was like, well, I don't know if I can afford that. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if we can do it. I don't even know if we're gonna have this house tomorrow. I don't even know if we're gonna be able to afford the car. I might lose this. And it was always like so much negativity. And I don't know, I haven't looked at her chart. I'm a little bit afraid to look at her chart, to be honest with you. But she was also, or is, a hoarder. And my whole of my teens, from as long as I can remember, and just so you know, my moon is in my second house in Scorpio, okay? I also have Saturn, my south node, Saturn, and Pluto, all in Scorpio, all in the second house. There's a lot of issues with wealth and money and possessions, and having an emotionally disconnected, both very emotionally disconnected. I felt often that my mother had more of a relationship with the boxes than with me. I was forced to be very independent. I grew up in piano lessons, ballet lessons, cello, playing the guitar, singing, all sorts of performing arts, and I was the one that was responsible for getting myself to lessons and doing this and practicing and learning and getting better and better and better. Ballet was like the love of my life, and like it was always my responsibility to do anything, even though I had no idea what I was doing, you know? And here comes the expression aspect. When I had a problem, you know, I was 14, 15, 16, like I was interested in boys. And when I had a problem with a boy, I remember being very hesitant to talk to her about it because it very quickly would become about her talking about her failed marriage. So I just never talked to her, you know? So there's that expression, that Gemini connection. And then the Scorpio with like the deep, deep depths there, and the moon representing the mother. And it kind of gets bigger and just kind of outreaches to the feminine and feminine polarities all together. So when there is a woman, like a potential friend, there's a lot of mistrust in me, and there's a lot of being very, very fearful of opening myself up to women. And it's interesting because tarot, according to my YouTube analytics, is about, you know, 80% female on my channel. And it has helped me with connecting with women. It really has. And being here in Bali, most of my clients are female. And it's sort of helping to bridge that gap and to heal that wound in some kind of strange way. Now that's specifically feminine authority figures, not necessarily friends, but looking out over the course of my life, the girlfriend aspect, I've always had guy friends. Like so much easier. I get it. Guys are just like more simple, and I don't know, I just have more trust in general. The Scorpio mistrust doesn't really help with that either, you know? A Scorpio placement there. So the last one is the Uranus, or the Uranus, and in the strong opposition with Chiron. So it's in the sign of Sagittarius, and it's in the 3rd house, right? Remember, it's opposite, it's flipped for me, which gives me sudden departures and insights, sudden insights and departures. But then a big questioning of like, why? Why did I leave? Even when I bought my flight to Budapest, I'm like, oh, should I go? Like, I'm like really questioning the motive behind it, but I'm gonna go, I'm leaving. But on kind of a flip side, a strong ability to switch topics arbitrarily and just like bink, 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 go from topic to topic. That's really hard to say. Try to say that 10 times fast. And you know, they say it's like a sign of a creative mind, maybe, or maybe it's a sign of a mind that just can't hold still. Maybe like a little bit of ADD, maybe, I don't know. But not a lot of linear thought. And again, difficulty, just like, I often will just blurt out something random that's not applicable to what is being talked about because my mind has already just like switched to the next thing. It's already moved on, you know? Here is something that is huge. And when I was reading this, I was like, oh, it makes so much sense. It all, just like all the pieces of the puzzle with this particular thing kind of fell into place, was sometimes resentfully walking the straight and narrow, doing what I am supposed to be doing in spite of my desire to break free and truly walk my own path. I cried when I read that, guys. I cried because there, and look, in studying Pluto, I was gonna start with Pluto, but there's so much that I don't know, guys. Like, not even just about astrology, but about the world around us. And one thing that kept coming up when I was studying Pluto, because Pluto is like the path of the soul. It's our desire and like what it is we're really here on Earth, and that constant like fighting with the desire for materialism, and then the retraction back into spirituality, and then you want something and then you don't. It's like that constant, like what the ultimate motivation for us, you know? And I've always felt that the things that I was supposed to be doing were completely wrong. Always. Like, I don't want money because it's not relevant, but then I need it. I need to buy stuff. I need to pay for stuff. I need to live somewhere. I've always had difficulty with the idea of the institution of relationships and what that has become and what that has morphed into. But yet I've had these types of more traditional relationships. And a whole slew of things that I won't get into now. But upon my research of Pluto, this one concept kept coming up and I had no idea what it was. And it was this concept of natural law. This is a whole thing, guys. Like, I'm not even going to touch it here. But upon my research of natural law, if you don't know what that is, you should get on YouTube and Google it. I've been having a hard time with it and it was, to be honest, this all happened right after I was doing my July readings. It's only been like a few days since I've been researching this and kind of getting this Chiron thing prepared. And, you know, I was thinking about it and I kind of made notes and whatever, but over the past 5 or 6 days, my world has been completely just like shattered. And I'm like, this is perfectly in line with this full moon and perfectly in line with everything that my tarot readings were about. It was super random because before those readings, I was like, okay, I'm a little bit, we'll see how it goes. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, this is what those tarot readings were talking about. This right here, this stuff in my life. So I'm not going to talk about Pluto or natural law quite yet here, but I feel like it's this concept of natural law that is satisfying this like desire to break free and walk my own path. Like, I feel like I found something that I can attach to, even though it's a long, difficult journey down this road. But it's something that I now realize was what I was thinking the whole time. And being in the sign of Sagittarius and being about wisdom, and wisdom is truth and alignment with truth, you know? And so that's something that I have really been, like, my mind has been blown just like this past week. And I'm so excited to learn more. And I will tell you something, I have never had passion for anything like this before. Because it's the only thing, it's the only type of knowledge that I have ever come across that actually sits well with my soul and my inner workings of goodness and morality and like truth and what's right. Okay, so I'm not even going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I don't know nearly enough to even talk about it, but I urge you to research this concept of natural law and versus, you know, the man-made law and everything that we're living in now, and how, yeah, just if you want, do your own thing. But again, it all comes back to like, to stop trying. Stop trying so hard, because here I am trying to walk that straight and narrow, and I'm trying to do what I'm supposed to do, but then I like reach that breaking point. It's like, ugh, and it's so hard for me to find that equilibrium between what I'm told is right and what I intrinsically in my soul and my subconscious feel is right. And as a conscious being and a conscious entity and an intelligent entity, okay, intelligent not meaning smart, but like connected to the consciousness. what I feel is good and right for my soul. And again, it's that association with Chiron and that Sagittarius nature of being such big picture. Now, you'll probably have placements in, you know, you're gonna have placements all over the board, all different combinations of, you know, Chiron being in Cancer in the 8th house, or being in the sign of Aquarius in the 12th house, or however your chart is. That's why I encourage you to begin learning about your Chiron, and every video I do is going to be highlighting a different planet and doing one planet at a time, one little aspect at a time. You don't have to know everything all at once, because to be honest, knowing everything all at once, it's going to render you useless and paralyze you, because there's so many things that need to be addressed and acknowledged, you know. So to look at your Chiron and see kind of what's going on there, and then we'll continue to expand and build upon that over time, and you can join me on my journey in that. Okay, so I've talked so much, I'm so sorry guys, but I will leave you with that. Thank you so much, and I will see you soon with the next astrology video. Thanks.